Good, happy Wednesday evening. I'm Riley King, and welcome to the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. We have a lot of news to get to this evening, so let's begin. First up, New Hampshire Homeland Security and Emergency Management. 10/16/2019. Nor'easter will impact the region tonight into Thursday with strong winds and rain. 1 to 2 inches expected with locally higher amounts possible. Windy conditions tonight into Thursday. Minor river and urban/port drainage flooding is possible. Decision briefing support. What to expect. And let's take a look at that photo. Here is what all of you should expect. And New Hampshire Homeland Security and Emergency Management said they will be opening at 5 a.m. tomorrow to monitor this nor'easter storm. Bail reform law considered at state Supreme Court. Lawyers argued law doesn't allow judges to detain defendants because of flight risk. Let's take a listen to the video from WMUR News 9, Adam Sexton.
If my man was wearing this, I would be all over him. I love it. I would use this on myself.
New Hampshire's controversial bail reform law is now before the state Supreme Court. Justices hearing oral arguments for the case at Windham High School through the court's On the Road program. In State versus Christina Hill, supporters of bail reform are arguing that the new law does not allow judges to detain anyone solely because they pose a flight risk.
There is nothing expressed in Section 3, absolutely nothing expressed in Section 3, where the legislature has said that if a defendant is a flight risk, but not a risk of danger, that defendant may be detained.
But a ruling in this case is expected later this year.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Missing elderly couple found safe, Hampton police say. A missing elderly couple has been found safe, according to Hampton police. New Hampshire State Police had issued a silver alert for Dave and Orna McGee, both 86. The McGees had last been seen leaving an appointment in Dracut, Massachusetts around 3 p.m. Tuesday. The McGees were found safe in Bangor, Maine, police said. Shaheen meets with law enforcement officials to discuss suicide, mental health. Suicide of Nashua Police Captain came as shock to department. Let's take a listen to the video from WMUR News 9, Adam Sexton.
If my man was wearing this, I would be all over him. I love it. I would use this on myself.
In
In law enforcement, lives are always on the line, but more and more are being lost to suicide. When Nashua Police Captain Jonathan Lato took his own life last month, it came as a total shock to his department.
Everything seemed to be going well for him. He was well respected in every area he touched. So for it to happen was a surprise to us. And it also was a wake-up call that we had thought we were doing things well with peer one-on-one support, peer group support, mental health first aid training for every person who worked in the building. And then something like this happens.
Senator Jean Shaheen sat down with law enforcement leaders Tuesday in Nashua to discuss mental health and how the tragic case of Captain Lato could be a turning point.
The family and the police department here were very courageous in being willing to talk about that as a suicide, and it calls to attention for all of us that law enforcement suicide among first responders is a huge challenge, and we've got to do more to address it.
Some ideas under consideration include expanding education about dealing with trauma and a more centralized state-level approach to peer-to-peer mental health counseling, with an emphasis on outreach to rural departments whose access to these services is limited.
Almost make it a regional effort is going to help the long run, the profession, help longevity, help the careers to be positive, the service to the citizens and the visitors to be top-notch.
Mental health professionals say one of the most important next steps is for law enforcement to ensure this conversation continues.
To have first responders talk openly about their mental health and getting help, and we have some of them that are doing that publicly in the state, so that people get the clear message that this is not career-ending.
In Nashua, Adam Sexton, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Today, we remember Manchester police officer Michael Briggs. The 35-year-old officer died in the line of duty 13 years ago. We honor him and thank him for his service. Officer Briggs was shot while on duty on October 16, 2006. Officer Briggs had been on bicycle patrol and had responded to a call at the corner of Lake and Lincoln Streets. He was shot while questioning someone. Officer Briggs died the next day in the hospital. The suspect, Michael Addison, ran but was later arrested in Dorchester, Massachusetts. Addison was convicted of capital murder in 2008 and sentenced to death. Officer Briggs had served with the Manchester Police Department for 5 years. Officer Briggs began his career in law enforcement with the Hillsborough County Department of Corrections and also worked part-time as a police officer in Epsom before joining the Manchester Police Department in 2001. He was also a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. Officer Briggs left behind his wife and 2 sons. We salute him. He will never be forgotten. Rest in peace. And if you want to read that, it's on the Manchester Police Department Facebook page, and we will share it with you on the Riley King Network Facebook page. And now let's take a look at your U.S. stock market and see how your U.S. stock market closed for this Wednesday evening. And here's a look at that U.S. stock market for all of you for this Wednesday evening. Your Dow Jones Industrial Average closed in the red and went down. Your Nasdaq closed in the red and went down. S&P 500 closed in the red and went down. Gold closed in the green and went up. Oil closed in the green and went up. US 10-year closed in the red and went down. Euro/USD closed in the green and went up. And VIX closed in the green and went up. Stocks slip as weak retail sales offset solid earnings. Stocks fell slightly on Wednesday as weak retail sale data crippled with persisting trade war fears offset strong earnings results. Trump on Turkey-Syria conflict. That has nothing to do with us. ABC News. Let's take a listen to that video.
Are you okay with Erdogan saying that he is not going to do a ceasefire?
He didn't say that at all. He's meeting, and he's meeting today with some of our representatives. Mike Pence is leaving today, as you know. We needed to take an extra day for security reasons. But Mike is leaving. Mike Pompeo will be meeting also, who's here right now with us, and he's going to be joining the meeting. We have a lot of great people over there, we'll see. In the meantime, our soldiers are not in harm's way, as they shouldn't be, as two countries fight over land. That has nothing to do with us. And the Kurds are much safer right now, but the Kurds know how to fight. And as I said, they're not angels. They're not angels. If you take a look, you have to go back and take a look. But they fought with us. We paid a lot of money for them to fight with us, and that's okay. They did well when they fought with us. They didn't do so well when they didn't fight with us. When I refused to allow the Americans a year and a half ago to fight with the Kurds against Iraq, I said, wait a minute. This country, stupidly, just spent a fortune on fighting for, with, around Iraq. Nobody knows how they spent it. But they spent, actually, we're in the Middle East now for $8 trillion, if you can believe that stupidity. But in Iraq, we're in for probably $5.5 trillion. So they're telling me, wait a minute, we just spent $5.5 trillion fighting in Iraq and with Iraq, and now we're supposed to spend money to fight with the Kurds against Iraq. I said, no, thank you. So what happens is when I said we're not going to fight with the Kurds left. They didn't want to fight against Iraq, which right now isn't the greatest fighting force in the world. That happened twice. The Kurds actually are pulling back substantially from Turkey, and Syria is pulling in. Syria probably will have a partner of Russia, whoever they may have. I wish them all a lot of luck. You know, Russia was involved in Afghanistan. It used to be called the Soviet Union. Now it's called Russia for a reason, because they lost so much money in Afghanistan that they had a downsize, a very big downsizing. So if Russia wants to get involved with Syria, that's really up to them. They have a problem with Turkey. They have a problem at a border. It's not our border. We shouldn't be losing lives over it. But again, we only had 28 soldiers. It was 26, 28. I got all different numbers. It ends up being 28. Between the 26, 28, two people, and they're fully accounted for. So that's the story. It's very simple. And we're watching and we're negotiating and we're trying to get Turkey to do the right thing because we'd like to stop wars regardless, whether Americans are in or whether they're not in. We want to see wars stop. That's a very important thing. On a humanitarian basis, we want to see that happen. So I view the situation on the Turkish border with Syria to be, for the United States, strategically brilliant. Our soldiers are out of there. Our soldiers are totally safe. They've got to work it out. Maybe they can do it without fighting. Syria is protecting the Kurds. That's good. We are, and by the way, every player hates ISIS. Everybody we're talking about. Syria more than us. Russia more than us. They've done a big number on Russia. And we're over there fighting ISIS, but they're over there fighting ISIS too. They can handle it, and they should handle it. We can fight our own battles on our own territories. But you have a lot of countries over there that hate ISIS as much as we do. In some cases, probably more. So they can take care of ISIS. We have them captured. The United States captured them. Some were released just for effect, to make us look a little bit like, oh, gee, we got to get right back in there. But you have a lot of countries over there that have power and that hate ISIS very much as we do. So I think we're in a very strategically good position. I know that fake news doesn't make it look that way, but we've removed all of our, as we said, 50 soldiers, but much less than 50 soldiers. They're now in a very, very safe location, heading into an even safer location.
Hi, everyone. George.
Okay, and there you go on that video. And that does it for this evening edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday evening, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for another newscast. And I'll have a news report coming up in a little bit. Good night, and bye, everyone.